Good afternoon. Hi, folks. As you're hopefully quietly finishing up your desserts, we'd like to get started with our program. It's really exciting today that we have our keynote speaker, David Gibbons, who is Vice President of Marketing at Ustream, Inc. And we were just talking about it at lunch. How many of you know what Ustream is? Raise your hands. Oh, there you go, David. Maybe you don't need to speak to this group. Pretty smart audience. I wasn't so familiar with Ustream. So today we're going to learn a little bit about that and some interesting ideas for the future. A little bit about David. He is responsible for guiding the evolution of Ustream's unique online live video solution as it expands to meet the needs of thousands of broadcasters, from entertainers to consumers. So think of this broadcaster from a different perspective. TV companies as well as nonprofit organizations. Prior to Ustream, David held management positions at online video company Oyala and audio and video production equipment vendor Avid, known to many of us in this room. He has guided product strategy for multiple product lines, generating over $300 million in annual revenues. David studied electronic engineering at the National University of Ireland and audio engineering at Kingston University in London, England. Please join me in welcoming David Gibbons.
Ustream today is the leading live video technology for business communications and digital marketing. The Ustream platform is the most scalable and powerful video technology in the world.
Ustream makes live streaming easy. You can stream right from your web browser or mobile phone. Or with Ustream Producer, you can easily create professional-looking video productions without a video production crew. Ustream gives you the ability to go live in HD anywhere. Ustream is the largest live video platform on the internet and easily scales to audiences of any size.
I absolutely now believe it is not just comparable to HD television. In some cases, it can be actually superior.
With Ustream, you can reach every part of the globe with your message and captivate millions of potential viewers simultaneously.
The biggest benefit of Ustreaming is the amount of people that you're able to touch and reach at one given time. When we launched PlayStation 4, we thought maybe we'd get a few people watching us, but we ended up with millions watching us.
Ustream powers live video for organizations of any size, driving viewership and interaction through integrated social features and reaching audiences wherever they are. Ustream's Live Ad HD syndication service helps you find your target audience. Boost your online presence with engaging live high-definition video.
People measure success in eyeballs these days, and I think Ustream has been able to provide some of the biggest and best outreach there is possible.
We're seeing technology continue to improve, and the demands by consumers for high-definition video continue to happen. And with Ustream, we've taken those same concepts and provided that to now enterprises and are allowing businesses to connect with their consumer through a much higher quality video than ever before.
Ustream. Simple, scalable, social.
So thank you, SMPTE members, for hosting me, and also welcome to people who are viewing this broadcast online. As Patrick mentioned, we are streaming this entire presentation live. I wanted to roll that video because I actually anticipated far fewer of you in the room would have heard of Ustream and would know what we're all about. And I thought it was relevant that you just understood who we are before we dived into today's topic, which is about how does the internet manage to handle live video, and video in general, in fact. So, to begin, a little bit of a pop quiz. Anybody care to guess what this number might be? Number of people who watched the 1969 moon landing, live, of course, because that was the only way to watch it. And that was despite the fact that it was at a time zone that was middle of the night for much of Western Europe. A very significant live event broadcast through the traditional live TV network. How about this one? Good guess. But no, it's a little less glamorous. This is the number of views of Psy's Gangnam Style. I'm hearing from the laughter. Everyone's familiar with that Korean pop singer. This was accurate as of this morning when I checked it. Of course, it may be even higher now. I think I might be responsible for the 131 at the end myself personally. So I'm not about to draw an equivalence between those numbers. They're clearly not the same thing, but they are indicative of this different style of consumption, and they're also indicative of this globalization trend in the way that broadcasts are happening. The moon landing, of course, was able to reach around the world because TV networks were willing to take that content and share it in their local countries. But formerly Korean pop stars who sing in a language only known to 75 million people or so didn't have that option until recently. And thanks to internet video, there's now a way for those folks to actually reach a much larger audience. Of course, it's not the same thing. It's, you know, this 1.8 billion views, that's not like a TV audience watching live of 1.8 billion people. But it's still kind of interesting to contemplate the way that the internet is able to create those things. A typical large internet audience might be 2 to 5 million, so it's actually usually on a much smaller scale. And this is my third pop quiz number. It'll be almost impossible to guess, so I'll just go straight to it. This is the number of PCs plus smartphones plus tablet devices in use in the world, estimated at the end of 2013. And although it's very difficult to get an equivalent number for TV sets, I believe it's in the 1.5 billion to 2 billion range. And the reason I added together those three devices is because those are all devices capable of showing internet video. So those are the internet video screens available to the world's population at the end of this year. And that kind of brings us to, well, is that how people will be consuming TV? And you know, that's the question that I wanted to talk to you about today. It's sort of what is the impact of that on the future of consumption and on production of television? Here's the typical graphic you see of a glum huddle of teenagers together and yet separate, watching things on their phones, consuming content produced by the television and picture industry. And 34% of millennials, that's folks born around the turn of the 21st century, say that they watch no TV at all. They watch only online video. And furthermore, if you looked at the under 35 population, 50% of them say they have no intention of taking out a pay TV subscription. They don't imagine that they will ever do it. And so that's pretty significant, right? That's clearly going to affect us all in some way. And we need to figure out what is the way that that affects us. And we also need to figure out whether this alternative technology, internet consumption, is ready to do the things that the television network has been doing so wonderfully for many, many years. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about in kind of three different sections. I thought we'd spend a little bit of time on the experience and how that differs. So from the point of view of the viewers and what they're consuming, what are the factors that are making that variable? I thought we'd talk about the infrastructure behind delivering video on the internet, how the signal actually makes its way from the camera through the network to get to the viewer's devices. And I'd also thought we should talk about the challenges, the things that make that either a difficulty for people in the established broadcast business or potentially offer up an opportunity to do things in a new way and to have an impact that can increase compared to the situation we're in today. So let's start with the experience. The most obvious one that comes to mind for me is the viewing distance. For a long time, TV has thought about the 10-foot UI, and a lot of interactive TV developments have been about how do we make it possible for people to operate or interact with this streaming service or with this digital TV service using a 10-foot UI. But of course, now people are down to 10 inches. They're looking at their phones or the 2-foot to 10-inch range. And that has lots of implications for the way we create programs. Implications to do with shot framing. As we stream this, we're trying to capture both me and this slide deck and stream it to people who may be watching on a 3-inch screen. So you have to think about the visibility of things that appear on screen, what happens with cutaways, how you show computer displays or other text information on those screens. All those things are affected. Second thing that comes to mind for me is the screen size, of course. It's not just the distance that you hold it, it's the actual size of the screen. Everything from 3 inches to 96 inches or more. And even within that screen size, the viewport size can be different. Because if you're working on a laptop and it has a 13-inch screen, the video, as you know, is often just in a part of that screen, and it may not be content that you want to full screen because you're absorbing the other content that's around it. So the viewport sizes can also vary very widely, even within the range of those screens varying. Resolution. that's exactly what SMPTE needs, right? Another discussion about new resolutions and new formats. Looking forward to that. Resolution, you know, internet video is predominantly 16:9 now, thank goodness. But resolutions still vary greatly, and in fact, they vary all the way through the chain, from production through to the transmission, and also on the device itself, the resolution that the device tries to display is variable and different for every viewer. And what many people don't realize is frame rates too. So completely variable frame rates, even in the course of viewing a single program, which is a bit of a head spinner when you try to figure out the right production format. Quality, of course, no discussion of internet video can ever take place without discussing quality. I think Verimatrix believes that something like 60% of issues with watching internet video come down to the bandwidth that the viewer has. And that is the scary problem about watching online video. The quality that's delivered is no longer in the hands of the person who's controlling the transmission. The quality is actually determined by a variety of factors, including the bandwidth of the device that the person is watching on. And that may change from moment to moment, depending on their location. And that could be a big deal, too. So you can produce in high res, and we're regularly doing 1080 broadcasts on Ustream. But that doesn't mean necessarily that your viewers will get that, depending upon their specific situation. And then, of course, the other experiential factor, the behavior around how people are consuming, because the durations are changing, the frequency that people are watching the same content is changing, and those things are becoming less standardized. If any of you are enjoying Orange is the New Black on Netflix, you might have noticed that even the episode length, which is traditionally for a TV show like that, very constrained to a specific format to allow for advertising, is actually very variable. The episodes range from between 51 and 60 minutes, according to what the needs of the story that they were telling in each episode was. So that's pretty significant too, and that one in conjunction with the fact that people are binge viewing more often means that their tolerance for complexity in the plots and in the material that they're consuming is also on the increase. So that's a huge deal. About 50% of Americans say that they also binge view, a confession that more and more of us will make over time, I predict. So to me, what all that boils down to on the experience side is that in this internet age, there are fewer rules. There used to be some fairly good guidelines to operate within when you were making television programs. But in internet age TV, there are fewer of those. It's easier to break them. And they're also harder to depend upon. The rules about what the consumption pattern will be are harder to depend upon. So let's look at infrastructure and how these signals make their journey from the origin, which is the phrase we use for the point where the broadcast originates, through to the viewer that the consumer is watching on. And before we get into that, what is so hard about streaming anyway? Why can't those tech guys just get the code right and make it work all the time? Good question, right? Why isn't that possible? Well, one reason is the resolution thing that I talked about earlier. Obviously, that's a very difficult problem because you never know quite what you should stream, and you're depending upon the player to give you information so that you stream the appropriate resolution. Another issue is device fragmentation. This colorful picture that looks like a map of fields in Kansas somewhere is actually a graph that shows by the area of each square the hardware that's being used on different Android devices in the mobile handset world. So each little square is a different piece of hardware. It's a different display device. And this is just within the Android operating system. This chart doesn't even try to accommodate the fact that even on a single device, people might be running different versions of the Android operating system, which has had a little bit of an on-again, off-again relationship with flash video and other technologies that are common in internet video. And so that's a big deal. That device fragmentation occurs across Android and iOS. It even occurs across operating systems on desktops, where there's still 2 major operating systems and 3 or 4 browser alternatives for people on those operating systems. And that fragmentation means that the problem set that the code toads are trying to solve for is actually very broad. And as if all that weren't enough, layer on top of that codecs. And the codec world has always been complicated. It's maybe slightly less complicated on the internet, but it's a little bit of another dimension to add on top to all the other dimensions, because different codecs can be delivered to the same device through the same player and through the same network. But again, you need some knowledge of whether the device will be capable of displaying that codec and unwrapping the package that the codecs contain in. And then lastly, the things that are making it difficult, the points of origin, how the signal gets ingested, where that occurs, where that ingest transmits the signal to a CDN. A CDN is a content delivery network, and that's Ustream is a content delivery network in the sense that it can take signals in and then distribute them to multiple points around the planet for viewers. How close the viewer is to that edge of that content network, and what the viewer is actually watching on, of course. All those things, and these things as well, can greatly complicate that process of ensuring that quality video actually gets through. So those are infrastructural challenges. Needless to say, the place that I'm most comfortable in talking about how they're solved is how they're solved on the Ustream network, because each online video company is looking at this problem in a different way. Ustream is a pretty significant player. We're actually the largest live video on the internet, platform on the internet, and we can simultaneously serve extremely large audience sizes. We regularly do events in the sort of 3 to 10 million viewer range, and we have lots of users. We have up to 4 million people doing broadcasts. On some days, we even have thousands and thousands of those folks ingesting at once. In fact, we hold the record for the amount of simultaneous ingestion of video because, of course, when you're doing it live, it has to be ingested and transcoded and redirected to the viewer instantaneously. So we can do that for up to 170 hours of video per minute, which is a pretty good number. The Ustream platform is built in the same sort of technology stack way that you'll find for lots of internet technology vendors. We start off, of course, with the hardware itself. The hardware is owned and managed by us, but we also, in some cases where we're looking for extra capacity, spill over to other networks. And on top of that hardware, we build those things you see along the bottom, the fundamental building blocks of technology that manage the process of ingesting, of running a media server, which figures out who's entitled to view content and where their browser should be pointed to view that content, of managing the way that the traffic is delivered through the CDN, of packaging it up into formats that are acceptable to people's firewalls and to other internet routers that will need to touch the signal as it goes. On top of those fundamental technologies, we have a layer of APIs, and they allow us to build specific services that even our customers can take advantage of. And then at the top, we've got the application layer, as a lot of people will call it. Those are the actual things that we reveal to most of our customers. The pro broadcasting service that we have, for example, the viewer experience that allows someone to visit on their phone or on their desktop to visit the actual content in a player and load a player that's capable of decoding that content and processing it correctly. This is a kind of a geographic view of how that network is put together. We actually have a presence in the major geographies of the world. We're in Asia Pacific, we're in Tokyo, and also in Korea. We're in multiple points in the US where we allow you to ingest, and we also have multiple points where we serve out that video that gets ingested. And the same thing in Europe. It's necessary to truly have a global broadcast network. It's necessary to have those things in each major geography in order to deliver quality. And that's because in this internet age, you can't be sure where the viewers will come from. They will potentially come from anywhere in the globe so long as the content owner is willing to permit them to view from there. And here's the simplified diagram of what happens as signals pass through that network. So this is the journey of a signal from the source to the viewer. Starting on the top left, of course, there's a signal source that's like the ones that you're all used to. There's a camera or other device pointed at some interesting action. Passing into a live encoder, where it gets encoded into a format that can then be sent to our ingest streaming server. And the ingest streaming server will take that single copy and send it into the cloud. And the cloud, which I'll zoom in on in a second, that's where most of the action is actually happening in terms of making the signal compatible, making it reach people's devices correctly. And then on the right-hand side, of course, you've got the devices, all the different devices people will look at. I often think that, contrary to traditional broadcast networks where the information is being pushed out or broadcast, broadcast may not be the perfect term here because devices that are watching video on the internet, they're actually pulling. They're requesting the signal and they're pulling it out of the cloud. And along with that request comes information about what they're able to accept, which is what makes it all work. So here's what happens inside the cloud. The signal gets transcoded, and this is where, when you think of those complexity diagrams that I showed earlier, this is where the complexity gets managed. And frankly, this is the technologically difficult part that keeps the majority of engineering resources busy in any online video platform. A single bit rate comes in, hopefully a good high-res bit rate. It gets turned into multiple other bit rates. And that's very important because, again, the player will request the stream, but along with that request, it'll give some information about the bandwidth that it is capable of receiving and the bandwidth and viewport size that it's capable of showing in. And that's crucial because that allows you to send it something that it can use. If you send it 1080 and it's a small device that's only going to be able to display 240, then not only are you wasting the internet bandwidth connection to the device, you're also wasting the device's CPU, and potentially its battery life by having it shrink that 1080 stream back down to 240. And you're probably making that viewer buffer and experience interruptions in their video. And then apart from transcoding it to those different frame rates, we're also repackaging it into the different formats that are necessary to make it work on Android devices, iOS devices, smart TVs, other devices like that. So a lot of things are going on inside the cloud there, some that I'm not even showing, like the way that it balances the load between different servers depending upon where the requests are coming from by geography. And all those are necessary to make sure that the maximum number of viewers have the best possible experience with their view. So that's some of the infrastructural insight into how it works. To me, I can sum those up by just describing them as a scalable technology stack. I think that's one of the advantages that internet broadcasts have. They are very scalable in that way. There's some rapid standards evolution, but there is the capacity to do rapid standards evolution. And then there's a device type explosion, which is what is keeping us all busy trying to keep up. And in fact, earlier today, I think we saw even some more Apple devices that we'll be working on supporting in the near future. So let me move on to the challenges. And as I say, the challenges are also opportunities. These are areas where the existing infrastructure or the existing content and rights holders have to face a new challenge as a result of these new technologies. And yet that can also produce an opportunity for people if it's encountered in the right way. So as we pointed out, online video, increasingly 1080 now. So it is able to stand shoulder to shoulder with 1080 broadcasts on many networks. The amount of bandwidth that people are capable of getting in their homes is increasing all the time. And you'll see services like Netflix and even Ustream delivering 5 and 8 megabits signals to people who are watching 1080p signals. And that's pretty significant. So obviously, you can compare to an ATSC HD channel, which is, I think, around 18 or 19 megabits per second. But recall that ATSC is primarily using MPEG-2 encoding, whereas the internet is using MPEG-4 H.264 encoding, and is already ready to embrace the next standard that comes along, the HEVC standard, which will further increase the amount of efficiency that we get out of delivering that amount of bandwidth. So that's significant. That's one of the advantages that internet delivery has, in the sense that even if delivery bandwidths stay about the same and people are dealing with watching at 6 to 8 megabits per second, the quality that we can deliver through that pipe will advance as codecs advance. And that can happen instantaneously, since the codec is loaded as the player is loaded, and there's no install base to deal with or existing infrastructure that needs to deal with that. So it's very adaptive and it's evolving very fast. And I think that provides that opportunity for us all to even pursue longer term, higher resolutions than 1080 for internet video, which are today possible, but generally not used because of concerns for the way that viewers can consume. Would be remiss of me not to touch on sound. Of course, surround sound has been a part of the HD TV experience for a long time. Surround sound support is minimal right now, and that's mostly reflected by the fact that most devices are stereo devices. People are watching on portable devices, listening on stereo headphones. Some people are plugging laptops into their surround systems and receiver amps, but that's relatively minor still. But solutions are on the way. The Dash standard now recommends using these two technologies to ensure that you can deliver surround sound along with the rest of the live internet video you're delivering. I struggle to find a better phrase than accessibility for this, so I'm going to explain what I mean by accessibility. Accessibility in the sense that the broadcast network is no longer controlled online by a limited number of players, a limited number of multi-channel video programming distributors or MSOs. And that's significant. That means that potentially this is a network for broadcasting that's available to everybody. And in fact, we've seen that multiple times at Ustream, because we tend to be that solution for someone who's looking to do a live event at sort of a TV scale. Organizations of all kinds are able to do production at an excellent quality level. They're able now to do distribution, and they're able to get that high quality signal to the devices of people who are interested in watching. NASA, who did this Mars rover landing and have done multiple other broadcasts on Ustream, have seen this in action, where they've syndicated their signal both to traditional TV networks and also online, and found that the online stream was able to get audience sizes that exceeded, in most cases, what they got from the TV network audience. They got, I think, about 3.5 million views for this event, all online, all coming from the online group. And so that's significant, right? That means that previously you had to have content that was deemed interesting by the folks who held the keys to the broadcast infrastructure. And now you just have to be able to show that you have an audience globally for that of some kind. And And this chap, Michael Burnison from Sony Computer, he gets that. He has used the Ustream network to launch the PlayStation 4, Sony's innovative new gaming console, which is shipping to stores in a few weeks' time. They did a massive launch event for this that got 16 million views in a 7-day period, and half of those happened live during the event itself. And 8 million, while it's not an enormous number by television standards, is a pretty significant number, and particularly considering that they got that number globally. There was no TV network that could have sent their broadcast, which was about a 90-minute long walkthrough of the capabilities of their product. There was no TV network that would have accommodated a 90-minute program of that, and no TV network they could have given it to that would easily have reached globally the way that they did. But they had viewers from everywhere in Asia and Europe and North America watching, in most cases, for very long periods of time, this live broadcast and watching in high res and learning about the product. And we're able to do that without having to contact anyone from a traditional broadcast network, but simply through the internet. Another challenge, audience size. I was just touching on that a second ago. So, the audience size, I think people are wondering, will the internet replace the really big TV broadcasts? And of course, I threw out that 500 million people watching the moon landing. I don't think that's actually the place that the internet will ultimately come to occupy within the world of broadcast, because I think it's much better at doing things that are intermediate in size. Now, channel proliferation has led to the fact that we're no longer seeing the sort of single large broadcast where everybody tunes in and everybody talks about it the next day. And from this chart, you may have difficulty reading the scale, but the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, the finale of MASH in 1983, 125 million people tuned in to watch that live. The internet is not necessarily going to solve those sorts of problems, but those sorts of problems may not exist that much anymore, because Breaking Bad had about 10 million viewers, and that's within the scale that the internet can solve. And of course, as capacity increases, it'll easily be able to do 20 million viewers. And that's actually covering most of the cases that people are trying to cover with broadcast TV networks. Not to say, of course, that there won't always be Super Bowl broadcasts getting 160 or 180 million viewers live. We'll still want those, and we'll still want a TV network that can deliver those. But many of the other applications that people are thinking today should be delivered by TV networks can be delivered by internet networks in the future. Another challenge that a lot of people fret about in the online video industry and even in the traditional content production industry is advertising revenue, since it drives so much of the business. What is going to happen to advertising revenue? And in particular, how are ratings going to be measured, since there's a lot of confusion about what online ratings actually mean and how they can be compared to the ratings that everyone's used to consuming from Nielsen or other ratings companies. And while there is still some confusion, and there may be for some time to come, the fact is that the internet has the capability to deliver demographics that are unmatched by any system that we've seen previously. You can tell down to the specific numbers exactly how many people are watching in each geography, what devices they're watching on, how long they stayed watching the content for, even if they finished before the program finished. All of that information is going to give us tremendous demographic insight into what people want to consume and how they're interacting with our TV shows. And I think that that's going to have tremendous impact for the content production industry too, as they learn which parts of their material are the most engaging. It's bound to influence the production and the values that they apply to production. And actually, before I leave that topic, ad revenue online for online viewing, and even revenue from direct pay-per-view or download revenue, those things are small but creeping up. So they're not able to equal the massive television industry's revenues today, but they're definitely headed in an exciting looking trajectory. Audience distraction, that's another thing people often fret about. When I'm watching online, the video's going on my computer, and at the side, there's all this other stuff to read and talk about. That is a problem, but of course, people are distracted everywhere these days now anyway by internet technologies. Most people are second screening when they're watching their TV. And most of the research about what they're doing on their second screens, on their iPads and other tablets while they're watching TV is depressing. They're doing the same things that they do when the TV's not on. They're doing their email, they're reading headlines in their news, their social networking. They're doing things that inherently make them distracted. And yet, online engagement is still incredibly strong for certain types of content. In fact, for live content, you'll typically see people will watch up to 20 times longer than they'll watch a pre-recorded piece of content online. And that means that the power of seeing a live event occur right before your eyes and being able to experience that knowing that you're seeing it at the same moment as others is still as strong online as it has been in traditional TV broadcasts. And what about the shared experience, the water cooler moments? Obviously, the water cooler moments like the Ed Sullivan Show and the MASH finale, they'll never be the same again. But social networking is very pervasive, and most internet technologies provide a way for you to share the fact that you're watching that very content while you're watching it, which means your social network is also able to experience that with you and experience the excitement of seeing what you're seeing, or at least relate to you about the excitement that they felt when they saw it as well. This is one of the chaps from the video that I showed earlier. If you don't know Hank, he's a very talented video and audio production professional. He also is a Grammy Award winner, and he's been working for several years now on broadcasts like the Bonnaroo Music Festival this year, which got 11 million viewers through Ustream, and the Outside Lands Music Festival and others. And having worked in this industry, he's feeling like actually this can deliver the HD experience. We did those events in 1080 HD and provided all those transcoded options that I mentioned earlier for folks who are watching on different devices. So that's some of the challenges. I think what I'd like to leave you with in terms of how I see those challenges working for us, internet broadcasts are global in the sense that you can find an audience now that's way broader geographically than the audience that you could have found on a traditional TV network. They're social in a way that TV hasn't managed to become. They're accessible in the sense that anybody can be the broadcaster. You don't have to be part of the traditional industry in order to do a large event that can get an audience of 10 million viewers. And they're HD. They're finally HD, and that's been a struggle for a while for internet technologies, but it is actually the case now. Let me leave you with a personal anecdote, and it's just my reflection as I was thinking about how to get across what technology transitions mean to me. I thought I would share this. So if the year is 1984 or 1985, and I'm growing up in a middle-class household, there are 6 of us in our family watching traditional TV sets. With a family of 6, you can't always get to watch what you want to see. And in my mind, at least at the time, if I didn't see something, it was gone. It was lost forever. I'd lost my opportunity to see it. Even when we had a VCR, sometimes something else that was on another channel also wasn't. I felt like I've just lost that opportunity. I won't easily be able to see it. And then my father brought this into our lives. Few sniggers of recognition, glad to hear that. And this device, if you remember it, the Commodore 64, it plugged into your TV. That's how, it didn't come with a display. There was no separate computer monitor. You actually took a cable out of the back and plugged into your TV set. And because of that, this became my favorite channel. Anybody remember that? Yes, thank you. I spent more hours watching this channel than any other in 1985 to 87, I would guess. This really became my favorite thing to stare at. Because I became interested in technology, and I didn't realize it, but this was my first technology transition. I was learning about computing and the power that they could bring. And you don't study computing for very long without encountering Gordon Moore's Law, which isn't so much a law, but it's actually held true longer than perhaps anybody expected. It's the one that says that every 2 years, the number of transistors on an integrated circuit will double. And because that typically translates to the power of that circuit, it means that computing power is increasing by 2. And I think he published it in the early 70s, maybe 72 or 73. So I was aware of that when I was studying computers. And in my boyish mind at the time, I was going, this is fantastic. We just need a few more doublings to occur. And they'll be able to build the VCR that records all of the channels all of the time. And then I'll never miss anything. I'll never have to worry about not being able to see the channel that I wanted to watch. And the reason I'm sharing that is because in my mind, I looked at the first order problem, which was, I can't capture what's on these channels. And I thought the technology solution that this fabulous revolution of personal computers will bring is to be able to capture all of those channels. I was really stuck in that old paradigm of, I'm going to solve the problem by using the brute force of computing power to give me what I'm after, which is the ability to look at anything on any channel at once. And it never occurred to me that that's not really how technology transitions happen. The big leaps are big leaps because they change the paradigm. They don't just make the carriage with the horse, without the horse, go faster than the carriage with the horse. They make it so that you don't need a horse anymore, and that you maybe are not even thinking about traveling when you used to think about traveling. They fundamentally change your behavior in a way that you weren't expecting. And that's what's pretty difficult about technology transitions, but that tends to be the marker of the really large ones. They do completely change the nature of the problem to the point where you can barely recognize your old behavior in the new problem set. So tell me if you've ever played this game. Did you ever wish that you had a time machine that would let you go back in time and say something to the younger version of yourself. And did you ever figure, show of hands, has anybody, surely someone else has wished that they could do that at some point. Yes, your teenage self. Wouldn't you have wished to impart some wisdom to your teenage self? So when I play that game and I think about what is it that I would say to the 1984 me about these technologies and about what to do as I learned about technologies and transitions, it would be actually the same thing you could say to anyone today who is also experiencing their first technology transition. And it's this: be ready to embrace the changes that you can see the technology is bringing, because those are inevitable and you can tell that they're coming. But also try to prepare yourself for the fact that there will be another transition that occurs where you can't actually anticipate how it's going to change things. And we're all bound to live through more of those. We're going to live through transitions that actually change not just your behavior, but your goals. You're going to want something different because of the way the technology has impacted your lifestyle or behavior. And to me, that's why we all have to figure out how to evolve along with technology. We have to figure out not just how to adapt to the change that's occurring, but which changes are useful and in which ways we can use them to improve what we're actually doing today. So if I had a chance to go back in that time machine, that's what I'd be saying to myself. So I'm going to wrap. I think what I want to leave you with is that the power of the internet to deliver live video is pretty significant today. It's in that sort of 3 to 10 million audience size range. It doesn't replace everything that the TV broadcast network can do, and I don't believe it will ultimately replace all of those things. But it does fill in a very significant area that is both covered today by the TV broadcast network and an area below that where companies, individuals found the ability to broadcast inaccessible to them because they didn't have access to that traditional network. And to me, that's the power of the transition that we're facing, and it's the reason why I'm excited to be a part of internet video and to work for Ustream. So thank you all for your indulgence, and have a great show.